Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to this Azure Getting Started with Azure webinar series. Today is the last episode of the series, and if you ask me, it's one of the nicest ones. It's about Windows Virtual Desktop. I'm joined here today with Christian Brinkhoff. He'll be doing the presentation first. After his presentation, you have the opportunity to listen to the approach of our partners Wortel and Rapid Circle about Windows Virtual Desktop. And during the session, you can actually ask your questions in the chat box, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. So that's the way we're going to do this session today. I wish you a lot of fun, and Christian, please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thank you for the great introduction. So, I'm very pleased to be your host today. In the next 60 minutes, the first part of this presentation, I will walk you through everything what you need to know to implement and to migrate to Windows Virtual Desktop as part of this Azure Week. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself a little bit more. So I'm part of the global black belt team within Microsoft. So my role is very special because I'm sort of sitting between Microsoft Corp and the field, where I'm engaging around technical implementations, like events like this. So it's a pretty dynamic role, and I'm very pleased, as I said, to be your host today. So let's start with a huge thank you, because the interest and demand and the level of compliments that we get and the positive feedback is enormous around Windows Virtual Desktop. So and that is basically because of you, because you gave us feedback and we are able to address that feedback and make the product better. So huge thank you for that. And due to COVID-19, we made it possible to help a lot of businesses as well to continue to work from home. So in that negative situation, we did a very positive thing as well. So that kind of feedback that we hear from customers makes it very positive to work for Microsoft to help really help customers to continue with work from home and basically doing the job from home. So great things happened with Windows Virtual Desktop, and again, a huge thank you for helping us. So let's share a little bit about the agenda, and it's a very simplified agenda. So we will cover an update on Windows Virtual Desktop. So I will talk through what Windows Virtual Desktop is, what are the recent updates, what do you need to know to get started quickly, and what are the tool sets that you can use to migrate to Windows Virtual Desktop with, for example, Azure Migrate. So I'll cover more on that later on as well. So I will set a goal here. I will make you a Windows Virtual Desktop expert in the next 60 minutes. And our partners will extend that with their vision on Windows Virtual Desktop. So we have Wortel and Rapid Circle in store after my session, and they will share with you their best practices, their vision on Windows Virtual Desktop, and they will share as well what they think that Windows Virtual Desktop can fix or help or enable their customers to make work better in terms of traditional and in replacement for traditional VDI and RDS environment to the shift to Windows Virtual Desktop.
So, and I'd like to make an addition there, Christian, if I may. In the resources area, in your in the On24 interface, you can also see two Teams invitation links. So after the sessions or the recorded messages from Wortel and Rapid Circle, if you have more detailed technical questions, people can jump on a call directly with either Wortel or Rapid Circle to ask their questions or get any more information.
So that's great. That's great. So you can as well ask questions in the On24 program and afterwards directly to the partners. So if you're in the same situation, you want to start with Windows Virtual Desktop and are searching for common best practices or lessons learned from Wortel, Rapid Circle, that's your chance to answer those or to get answers to those questions. So let's start with the content. But before I do that, I would like to start jumping into a small story. So normally when I'm in a room with people in the room, I would ask the question, do you know which cockpit this is? Is it from an airplane, or what do you think it is? So I will make it easy for you. This is the cockpit of the space shuttle that roughly went to the National Space Center 8 years ago, the last time. And as you could see, that cockpit had a lot of buttons. So SpaceX did a great thing in changing the way how we go to for example, the moon in the future, but as well to the International Space Center. And as you probably remember, a week ago, they went for the first time with an independent company, not part of the government, an independent company called SpaceX, very efficient to the International Space Center. And they went to the International Space Center with a rocket that could be reused. So a very efficient way of going to space and going to the International Space Center, and eventually as well going to the moon and maybe to Mars.
It's quite a transformation, actually, if you compare it to just 8 years ago, you said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the great thing of that is basically improving old technology and making it more simpler, more easy. So on the left side, you see the cockpit that I just presented to you. And on the right side, you see the cockpit of the SpaceX, the Dragon rocket. So you can see a screen, but all the buttons are gone. So that's basically what I think that is called the word simplicity. So making things easier that we did in the past, and make it more efficient and make it more cost effective. And that's exactly what we do with Microsoft Azure as well. So if you look at a traditional data center environment, all the complexity, purchase hardware, license complexity, all those things together, make it very hard to maintain that environment. With Azure, we do that already for you. We have everything in store. We work towards subscription-based licenses and everything pay-as-you-go. So it's very efficient to create a complete global data center environment. And who remembers the old cable management rubbish?
No, I do.
So that reminds me of my old days doing the maintenance work. Go in, replace a server. That's all gone because Azure is basically already prepared and very efficient on that. And as part of the Azure licensing, the subscription-based licensing models of M365 and the Azure pay-as-you-go licensing models, or pay-as-you-go billing model, that's the better word. We solve that for you. So roughly 60 plus regions are currently available within Azure. So you can easily spin up a global data center environment, spin servers, services, whatever you want to use easily from any place in the world, which is most likely close by to your physical office location. And that's the great thing about Windows Virtual Desktop as well, because we build Windows Virtual Desktop on top of Azure. So you leverage all those data centers and the efficiency of that, and you transform from a traditional VDI and RDS infrastructure as well to a very efficient way of doing desktop virtualization. And the reason because of that, why we do that, is because our industry does not respect tradition. What it respects is innovation. So be on the cutting edge of technology, make the best possible for your customers and empower our customers. That is what resonates in the company. And that makes it possible to rethink about the things that we did in the past, make them available more efficient. And that's exactly what Windows Virtual Desktop is. So making the reflection to that cockpit and the change to the new cockpit, which is more simplified, that's exactly what we do as well with the shift from traditional VDI and RDS to Windows Virtual Desktop, which is a platform service, or also known as a desktop as a service solution. So on this picture, you see the first bucket available, and that includes the web access, diagnostic, gateway, brokering, load balancing, global load balancing service. Everything that you normally need to do yourself is now part of a service that we, Microsoft, already prepared for you, and we maintain for you as well. So it's a very efficient way to spin up a complete desktop virtualization environment as part of Microsoft Azure. So you can select your own data center location where you want to place your virtual desktops, and we do the front end for you. And that's as well the reason why Windows Virtual Desktop was so popular, or still is so popular, during the COVID-19 situation. So I have more information on that later on. So the middle bucket is your Azure subscription. So that's where your virtual desktops are stored in your session host. And that's basically your own responsibility. So you need to create images based on Windows 10 single session or the new Windows 10 multi-session operating system. More on that later on as well. But the other great thing is that you get exclusively access to Windows 7 with 3 years extended security updates for free. So that's a huge benefit that you get for free as part of the licensing model. Another great thing, if you have existing images from your existing RDS or VDI infrastructure, you can reuse those images as well. So if you, for example, have Windows Server 2012 R2, 16 or 19, you can reuse those images as well and use and take advantage of the simplicity of the Windows Virtual Desktop control plane, the workspace that you see in the first bucket on this picture. So, and then last but not least, the underlying infrastructure is Azure. So you leverage infrastructure as a service. So your networking, compute and storage, basically your hypervisor layer, everything that you normally did in a traditional environment yourself, is all being done for you as well. So that creates a very easy and efficient way of doing desktop virtualization as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. So we also call it the Windows Virtual Desktop Workspace, and previously known as the tenant. So I would like to touch base a little bit on what we see and hear from customers that are compelling scenarios, or where we see a good compelling story on where Windows Virtual Desktop is a very good fit for that use case, for that vertical. So where we see a lot of interest and customers going into production or already are in production is in the security and regulation space. So think about financial, healthcare and government use cases where there is a regulation need active that when you log on to your device and when you log off, there's a need that there doesn't stay any footprint left on the endpoint. That's something we can accomplish with Windows Virtual Desktop easily. But the other great thing is that we can add Azure MFA conditional access as a security service as part of Windows Virtual Desktop to the offering. And that makes it very efficient and very secure as well to consolidate your environment, your corporate applications, your corporate desktop, only to that specific desktop and not the complete network with, for example, with a VPN in place. So it's a very highly secure way of doing the delivery of your apps and your desktops to your end users. So let's move to the next bucket and talk about elastic workforces. So think about you're a global large company, you acquire a company, and you need to get all those employees as fast as possible up to speed with a corporate desktop, corporate applications completely consolidated from, for example, Azure. We can do that as well because I shared in the previous slide, it's fairly easy to completely deploy the Windows Virtual Desktop infrastructure because the infrastructure components are already prepared for you. So basically with a deployment, when you start from scratch, we have customers that get up to speed within a couple of hours. So that's in the elastic workforce a very good way. And that brings me up to the other point, work from home. So as I said earlier, COVID-19 is very negative. But the positive thing about the technology that we provide is that we can make it very fast and easy to provide access to your corporate environment and your corporate applications. So that's where we see a very good compelling use case as well. So other great compelling use cases, short-term employees, contractors. So think about spinning up an environment for a freelancer, use that for 3 months, and then spin it down and only pay for the compute cost for that 3 months of usage. So it's a very efficient way of using resources as part of Azure because we have that resource, that subset of resources already available for you.
Yeah, so in that sense, Windows Virtual Desktop also really follows the cloud computing promise that you only pay for what you use and you don't have to pay.
Exactly. You just pay what you use. You can, and that leads me up to a next topic that I cover later on as well. You can provide power management tooling, and during business hours you use, for example, 100% of your desktops, and after business hours you can spin down 50% of your desktops and only pay for that 50% of those desktops after business hours, and that can save you up money as well. So a very efficient way of doing desktop virtualization, but as well data center management, because you go in a complete transformation to a very efficient way of doing data center management. So that leads me up to the other point, specific employees. So think about bring your own device. You have your own device. You want to consolidate your corporate apps, your desktops in a secure way. So we provide a variety of endpoints. We support Android, iOS, Windows obviously, but Linux as well, and a web client, an HTML5 web client, and that leaves us in the position to to publish applications and desktops on every device. So bring your own device is completely supported. Think about call centers as well, branch workers, so all kinds of like scenarios that we can easily enable with Windows Virtual Desktop. Another use case that we see quite often is specialized workloads. So think about a single session Windows Virtual Desktop or a single session Windows 10 based virtual desktop with persistent writes, so the rights to install an application. That's possible as well. So in comparison to RDS back in the days, that was impossible. That's something that we created as a new use case. But another great use case is like design, engineering, and manufacturing kind of use cases that allow or have a requirement to have extra GPU resources in the virtual machine. So think about an NVIDIA graphical card or one from AMD. So we can use the N series as part of Azure and use that as a virtual desktop as well. And that creates like use cases for auto manufacturers or like AutoCAD designers or Photoshop designers. So all kinds of use cases that can leverage the easiness of Azure and Windows Virtual Desktop, centralized, managed in a secure way, and take away the hardware costs and share the hardware costs as well from Azure as a centralized managed platform.
In the session last Tuesday, René also talked about fractional GPUs. That's a new possibility. I think it's still in preview, but it's...
No, it's already in GA.
Yeah?
So
awesome.
That's the NVV4 series from AMD, and they run as part of an MI25 graphical CPU, GPU inside one, and that's a fraction of the complete CPU or CPU, GPU. It's like both in one, and that is available right now already in West Europe.
Oh,
so that
awesome.
Creates the possibility to segmentate it in like 1/4 of the GPU, and that makes it
so you
more
don't have to
efficient.
pay for the entire GPU.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's great. You have the option to pick whatever fits best for your use case. NVIDIA, AMD, we have both for you in store.
We also have a couple of questions coming in. Some on architecture. I think you're going to touch on that a little later, so I'll keep that one. And some more questions on like the Windows 10 with rights to install applications, additional software, local admin rights. I think you're all going to touch on that later.
I have a very special topic on that, and that's MSIX App Attach, and that covers completely how you do the application installation with Windows Virtual Desktop. So.
Awesome.
So let's talk a little bit for the folks on the webinar about what is Windows Virtual Desktop. I think everybody pretty much know what Windows Virtual Desktop is. I did already some explanation, but just to have everybody on the same page, Windows Virtual Desktop is available worldwide, which means you can use it on any like Azure data center location that I just explained. We have several like other locations as part of like a gateway and brokering service. I'll cover that later on as well. But just in essence, like Windows Virtual Desktop, we call Windows Virtual Desktop the best virtual desktop available because you get exclusively access to Windows 10 multi-session. Windows 10 multi-session is Windows 10, which you know from your laptop probably, with the multi-session capabilities that you know from Windows Server. So Windows Server is a very popular operating system in virtualization use cases. However, there is still like a trade-off in terms of an experience point of view in a comparison to like Windows 10 as a desktop operating system. With Windows 10 multi-session, we solve that because you use Windows 10, the same like bits and bytes as Windows 10, the same benefits of Windows as a service with every 6 months like a new update with all the latest and greatest features. But with the benefits of sharing that virtual machine with multiple sessions on one virtual machine on Azure. So it's a very efficient way of doing desktop virtualization, which gives you the end user the experience that they run on Windows 10. So you can combine like multiple hardware investments of a virtual of a physical desktop into a virtual desktop, which can combine like one virtual machine with multiple users on that. So it's a very new dynamic way of doing that. And it gives you, as I said earlier, the same experience as Windows 10. So no trade-off that you know from Windows Server. So a huge advantage. And that leads me up to the other point. It's completely optimized for Office 365 Pro Plus as well, which is now called M365. And the great thing of that is that you use the FSLogix Profile Container technology, a company that we acquired in November 2018, as a baseline for profile delivery. And that gives you the same experience as that you use Office 365 on a local laptop device. Another great thing is that we, as part of Microsoft, not only acquire companies to solve that, but we change as well the core product to make it better work on a desktop virtualization scenario. So think about OneDrive per machine, Teams per machine, and the new Teams audio and video offloading that is just released a week ago. I have a complete demo on that later on as well. So stay tuned for that, because the experience of Teams can be the same as well as on your local laptop device with Windows Virtual Desktop. So another great thing is that you can migrate desktops and apps. So think about your existing Windows Server RDS environment or VDI environment. We can easily reuse those images, provide them from the Windows Virtual Desktop agent, and use the Windows Virtual Desktop brokering, the workspace service that I just explained as part of the offering.
Christian, could that also be a VMware VDI environment?
So in terms of the migration from, that doesn't matter. So we operate based on the operating system. So if you come from VMware or any other vendor, that's all possible. It really ends up in what your requirements are, and then you can make the shift to Windows Virtual Desktop. We have great partners as well with Citrix and VMware, so that's a possibility as well to use on top of Azure. So a variety of services that we can provide as part of the Windows Virtual Desktop service. And another great thing that I already covered is the deploy and scale in minutes approach. So as I already explained, you leverage the Azure cloud, so you can deploy, spin up your environment in minutes, spin them down, and only pay for what you use. So a very efficient way of doing desktop virtualization. And we do that with other services as well, as you probably learned the last 4 days back this week during this Azure week. So that leads me off to the next point. So as part of Windows Virtual Desktop, we have several service instances around the globe. So you can deploy your Windows Virtual Desktop environment in all the Azure data centers that support compute. But we have a variety of other like data center locations where the service instances are stored, also known as the control plane of Windows Virtual Desktop. So we have a lot of services in the USA and South Africa. We have as well in Europe. South Africa is coming, by the way. I have a slide later on that, the next slide to be specific. But if you see or look at all those locations over here, you can see that the service is available globally, worldwide. So no matter where your business is active, we have a point of presence, an instance available that can create a very low latency and very good user experience for your sessions. And to improve the availability of Windows Virtual Desktop and to make like the service instance that you see on this picture available very close by to your end users, we will add, as I already like sort of alluded to in the previous slide, we will make more locations available for you. So the next upcoming locations that come to as an extra offer to that service instance is South Africa, France, Germany, Norway, as well as the UK, Korea, United Emirates. So if you think in the direction of having a global wide service, this creates like that you can achieve a latency to the Windows Virtual Desktop environment below like 40 milliseconds. And what we recommend as a best practice to use is below 150 milliseconds. So it's way closer to the 0 than to the 150. So we think that every customer can be beneficial and can leverage Windows Virtual Desktop with a good end user experience because of that. So all the locations that you see on this slide will be available in Q3 this year, calendar year. So that leads me up to the other topic, and that's security. Security is very important for Microsoft. We invest a lot of money in making the Azure platform as secure as possible and stay as secure as possible. And one of the components as part of your licensing model can increase the security of your virtual desktop, your Windows Virtual Desktop environment as well. So think about conditional access, multi-factor authentication, RBAC as an example. That are services that are part of your M365 licensing model that you can use in conjunction with Windows Virtual Desktop as well. So think about enabling conditional access and filter access to your Windows Virtual Desktop corporate apps based on like security patches or location or MFA or have like an Azure AD compliant device, all kinds of filters that you can set to increase the security and the access level of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. The same for Azure MFA. Azure MFA is like a secondary authentication mechanism that you can use to enter in your username, password, and then afterwards you will be prompted on your phone or get a call or an SMS. And that creates an extra level of security, because when you, for example, have a very insecure password, that creates that extra level of security, because you need to give in that extra authentication on your phone, on the mobile app as well. So when you have, for example, a very insecure password, it's fairly easy as well to make sure that your environment stays very secure because of that. And Azure is a very secure platform as well, because we do a lot of investments in that. You probably learned from that more in the last 4 days. But just to sum up it roughly, you can see that we invest a lot of money and time and like cybersecurity experts to keep that the best and most secure platform possible. And as an extra layer on top of those two components, we fit Windows Virtual Desktop on top. And Windows Virtual Desktop is improved in comparison to RDS, because we changed the way how we operate between the session host, so the Windows 10 single or multi-session host, to the brokering service over a protocol enhancement which we call Reverse Connect. And Reverse Connect means is that we only require you to have port 443 from inside the virtual network where the virtual desktops are stored in, to open up port 443 from inside to outside to a certain amount of URLs. So you can completely lock down internet traffic, consolidate your traffic, and make it very secure to, for example, lock down your environment and publish your applications. So we think, therefore, that Windows Virtual Desktop can create the most secure desktop virtualization, which is centralized, managed from the Azure platform for you, for your end users. So coming back to the point, simplicity, we definitely think that you can improve your environment and consolidate a lot of management effort and security effort that you take right now to make it secure and keep it secure, because with Windows Virtual Desktop we do that already for you, and we do it for other services as well. And that leads me up to the licensing slide. Very important, because you need obviously a license for Windows Virtual Desktop, but the good thing is that when you are licensed, you get a lot of benefits because of that as well. So think about, in a traditional RDS environment, you need to have an RDS call. With Windows Virtual Desktop, we removed the need for an RDS call. So if you are entitled for Windows Virtual Desktop and then for the client operating systems, which are Windows 10 single session, Windows 10 multi-session, and Windows 7 with the 3-year extended security updates offering for free, then you don't need an RDS call anymore. So you take away the, I don't know what the retail price is, I think it's roughly 15 euros per call. You take away that price and you consolidate that in one. So you simplify as well the way how you do license management, and as well you decrease the cost of your environment. And as part of that licensing model that you see on the left side, you get the control plane offering for free. So all those services that are stored inside that control plane that you normally had to spin up yourself are now part of that offering and are available for free. So you save on resource costs because of that as well. So licenses that you need for that are M365, E3 or E5. We have for education special licenses, F3 business for the smaller kind of users, for businesses that are smaller than enterprise sizes, and we have Windows 10 Enterprise as well, and education in terms of an operating system subscription-based license model. And even if you have existing licenses based on Windows 10 VDA, you can take advantage of those operating system benefits as well as the control plane that I just explained. There's a possibility as well to use Windows Server, as I explained earlier, and therefore you still need to use an RDS call. So we think that the client operating systems, either Windows 10 single session or Windows 10 multi-session, can give you the best experience as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. So therefore we think that we need to move a little bit in that direction. But if you still want to reuse your existing images, you can also use Windows Server 2012, R2, 16, and 19 because of that. But therefore you still need an RDS call. And so keep that in the back of your head, and as well an software assurance contract on top of that. Another great benefit that you get as part of Windows Virtual Desktop is that you don't longer pay for the operating system license in Azure. So we take away, we call it the Linux rates, we take away the operating system costs from Azure on the OS, so you only pay for the compute costs. So that's another benefit that you get, and you get that benefit with both client and server-based operating systems. So another benefit that you can leverage as part of Windows Virtual Desktop, I already explained that you can provide power management tooling. So that means that if you, for example, work from 9 to 5, that you spin up your environment after working hours to like 50% of the availability and only pay for like that 50% of the compute cost on Azure. But the other benefit that you can do is use reserve instances as part of Azure. So you pay up front for 1 or for 3 years for your resources, and you can get up to a 72% discount based on pay-as-you-go pricing models. So another benefit, and because of the reserve instances, when you already prepay for your resources, it's no longer necessary when, if you want to provide power management. So if you work like shifts and you need to have your environment like completely available every time, 24/7, then reserve instances could be a good fit for your use case. So let's touch base on recent updates on Windows Virtual Desktop. But let's.
Yeah, I do get a lot, quite some questions in the chat box, and I cannot type everything back because it makes too much noise. Some of them are on architecture. I'm assuming that we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But also some other things. Back to the sharing of graphical cards. Will that also be possible with NVIDIA cards?
Yeah. Both NVIDIA and AMD. Yes.
And are there plans to add Linux as an OS?
So that's a very good question. So currently we make it possible to use the WSL service, so you can emulate Linux as part of Windows 10, and then you can publish your desktop. So that's already possible, but we are currently investigating if we want to make Linux possible as part of Azure.
Yeah. You touched a little bit on the Teams optimization.
I have a complete demo on that.
And we have a question specifically that CPU spikes when you use a browser, for example, for watching YouTube, using a B-series machine. What could be a possible cause of that?
So the question is, if we use Teams, we see spikes in CPU.
No, it's mostly using YouTube, for example, watching video.
Yeah, so if you want to use YouTube for like watching videos or maybe do editing, then it's probably better to use like a graphical enhanced machine, and then the NVV4 could be a very good fit because the pricing is very low because of that fraction of the CPU that you're using. Yeah. So it's worth checking that as well.
Great. And one question on the locations. So you showed the control plane and all the locations. Can we make sure that the VMs live in the Netherlands?
So the VMs can always live in the Netherlands because we support West Europe, and West Europe is Amsterdam. That's the picture as well that I showed in the beginning. So that's Middenmeer here in Amsterdam. And so if you pick West Europe, then your VMs can live in the Netherlands and Amsterdam. Yes.
All right. That's so far.
Okay, great. So let's continue with the most fun thing and fun part of this presentation, and that's around the recent updates. So recently, on the 30th of April, we did a lot of improvements to make Windows Virtual Desktop better and address a lot of feedback based on customer feedback to make the procedure to enroll Windows Virtual Desktop and to implement Windows Virtual Desktop tremendously easier. So we received a lot of feedback of, okay, we need PowerShell, we need to do consent separately, and then we need to shift to the Azure portal. So all kinds of feedback items that we received and addressed in the new ARM-based model of Windows Virtual Desktop. So I will explain more how that works and how you can implement it in some next slides. So this is the blog article that we published. It's written by Brad Anderson, and that includes all kinds of great initiatives to make Windows Virtual Desktop performing better for our end users. So a great example of Microsoft think in the customer to enable customers to better work on a virtualized environment as well, and as well on the admin side to do the management and the maintenance of the environment. So what are the specific differences between the non-ARM based model of Windows Virtual Desktop, or also called the 2019 fall release, and the new ARM-based model, also called, and as part of that blog article that I just explained, the Spring 2020 update. So as part of the updates, we improved the app publishing way of doing, for example, remote apps or desktops. So think about assigning a desktop to a user. In the current fall 2019 release, that was only possible to do on an individual basis, so only one user per application group. With the new ARM-based model, we provide the option to configure Azure Active Directory groups, so a very dynamic way to provide access to applications and desktops. So another great thing is the admin control capabilities. So with the ARM-based model, the new Spring 2020 update, we make it possible to use RBAC in Azure to delegate access to your administrators or help desk employees to only, for example, see a subset of your workspace environment. So for example, your host pools, etc. So another great thing is that we now consolidate completely in the Azure PowerShell module. So think about the normal Azure module, Azure Storage, for example. We integrate in the Azure PowerShell module with AZ desktop virtualization right now. So it's very easy to use those PowerShell modules. So another huge enhancement, and that is something I will show in some next slides, is the new management experience. So within the ARM-based model, we make the management portal and the complete walkthrough setup of deploying a host pool available from the Azure portal. So you can do everything from A to Z, create your workspace, which was previously known as a tenant, do all the steps or all the pre-steps that you previously had to do or in the current fall 2019 release. We make it now possible to do that all consolidated in one experience in the portal. I will walk you through how that looks and feels later on. So huge improvement, and it addresses a lot of feedback that we received. As I shared earlier, we need PowerShell for this, and we need that portal for that. That's now all consolidated in the Azure portal. So again, simplicity, making it easier for you to to do the management and the maintenance, the partly maintenance of that component piece that is active in your Azure subscription. That leads me up to monitoring. So with the new ARM-based model, we integrate completely with Azure Log Analytics. You can easily export your diagnostic settings as part of your workspace and inject them in your Log Analytics workspace and make it easy to make dashboards available and proactively monitor your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. The service metadata location of Windows Virtual Desktop is now available to select. So previously that was only possible to select in the USA. Currently you can select all the different data centers in the USA. And once we go GA, and GA is planned for this quarter, you can as well select Europe. So probably that leaves, or gives an answer to the question that we currently receive. Can you deploy virtual machines in the Netherlands? Yes, you can. But in the GA state, so this quarter, you can deploy it as well. In terms of the metadata in West Europe, so in the Netherlands.
That was also a question that we got.
Okay, so 2 in 1. So that's another efficient way of doing that. So, and as I said, the consent piece and PowerShell piece that you previously, or in the fall 2019 release, have to do is now all consolidated in the Azure portal, so no longer needed to do. So let's show some screenshots how it looks and feels. So this is the new dashboard of Windows Virtual Desktop. So if you go to the Azure portal, you search for Windows Virtual Desktop, you will see this screen, and here you can just click on Create a Host Pool, and at that moment you start the host pool creation very easily, and then you can deploy host pools, virtual machines inside that host pool and the workspace. Another great enhancement that we did is that we made a user section available as part of the Azure portal integration. So you can go to users and then select or type in a username, and you can see on which host pool virtual machine that user is logged on. You can send them a message, you can log them off, you can disconnect, you can do all kinds of help desk kind of work to make it easier to do the maintenance or the management of the environment as well, while running in a production scenario as an example. Another great thing is that you now can select, based on the host pool, custom RDP settings easily from the portal. So previously they had to be done via PowerShell as well, but now you can just do it from the Azure portal and align with your security needs. So disable device redirection as an example, and then afterwards you are done, and you can leverage that kind of settings already directly for your end users while clicking it through in this RDP properties section as part of the host pool. So another easier way of removing a lot of like manual of extra buttons and make it easier and consolidated available as part of the Azure portal, the Spring 2020 update that I just explained. So that leads me up to the monitoring piece. So if you go to the Azure portal and you enroll the Windows Virtual Desktop ARM-based model, you can easily go to the diagnostic settings and then export all your like errors, host registration failures, all kinds of metrics that you want to see proactively to maintain the stability of your environment. You can export that to Log Analytics and create custom dashboards for that. So this is an example of a custom dashboard that we created internally that gives you visibility in terms of how many users are logged on, what is your logon duration, what are the errors in your environment, are there hosts that are in an error mode. So all kinds of like metrics that you want to see proactively. That leaves you up in a position as well to, for example, show that on a screen in your IT department and look at the status of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment easily as part of another Azure native service, which is called Log Analytics or Azure Monitor. And another great thing of the new ARM-based model is that we completely align with everything that is available in ARM. And a great example of that is the shared image gallery. The shared image gallery of Azure is like a service that can provide you image management capabilities that you can use as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. So you can create a new virtual machine, a new image version, and you can do versioning, as you can see on the screenshot, easily. And when you, for example, deploy a host pool as part of Windows Virtual Desktop, you can create a new image version, you can spin up a virtual machine, do your updates, and then afterwards you capture, you sysprep that machine, you promote that version, and then when you deploy a new like virtual machine as part of your host pool, it will pick that latest version. So image management is like completely changed, which was very complicated in the fall 2019 release, which is now very easy to do as part of the shared image gallery methods that we provide as part of Azure as well. So that leads me up to the point, what do you need for Windows Virtual Desktop? So I will walk you through some of the key components that you need beforehand before you start the deployment. So obviously you need to have an Azure subscription. That's mandatory. So that could be a pay-as-you-go, enterprise agreement, it doesn't really matter. Every Azure subscription type is supported. You need Azure Active Directory as well, because that's our authentication layer of doing like conditional access, MFA, everything, and you most likely already have Azure Active Directory because you use Office 365 services. So because of that, you probably have an Active Directory environment as well, which synchronizes to Azure AD, and that's one thing that you need to have as well for Windows Virtual Desktop. In the near future, we will move completely to Azure AD native as well on the computer account side, but right now AD is still required, but most likely you probably already have that in store for your corporate applications that are still requiring AD. So that's one of the key components that you need to have before you start the deployment. You can decide to store your AD server on-prem or via an express route, use it on-prem, or store it in your Azure subscription, and then use the long or the short distance connection to use it in Azure and have as well a reliable connection in case that the VPN, so to say, has an outage, as an example. So other associated resources that you need is potentially a custom image. If you want to use a custom image approach, you can use that. So you need to prepare your custom image first. A virtual network, potentially a storage account for your FSLogix profile container. So you can use Azure files for that sense, or Azure NetApp files. Other two platform services that you can leverage for that. And eventually as well, administrator credentials for Active Directory to do the join, and as well for Azure, obviously, to create virtual machines and to do the resource provider registration once. So that are, so to say, the requirements, and then you can start with the deployment. So let's walk you through to the initial deployment steps that are part of the new Spring 2020 update, the ARM-based model of Windows Virtual Desktop. So you can experience yourself how easy it is to deploy from A to Z, a complete virtual desktop environment as part of Azure. So you go in the Azure portal to Windows Virtual Desktop, and you click on Create a Host Pool. And as part of the creation of the host pool, you select your Azure subscription, your resource group, and as well your host pool name. Your host pool name is a set of hosts So it's basically a pool of hosts. So multiple Windows 10 virtual machines as an example. You change your metadata location to the location you prefer, and the host pool type, you can set it to pooled, which means like multi-session, or personal if you want to use single session Windows 10 as an example. So after that we move to the next step, and that's where you add the virtual machines, the Windows 10 multi or single session virtual machines to that pool. So you can select the Azure region that you want to select. That could be any Azure region that supports compute, a resource group, the amount of virtual machines, as well as the prefix for the virtual machines, so the computer count, which can be like WVD, and the auto count will create the machines based on the number that you create in terms of how many session hosts you add to that host pool. The virtual network needs to be selected, and as well the account that you use to join the computer accounts to the domain. So that's the last part over here that you need to define. So you need to make sure that that account has the rights to join your computer accounts to Active Directory. So when you're done with that, there's only one step more to be left, and that's the creation of the workspace. So that's previously known as the tenant. This is a step that you previously had to do via PowerShell. Right now it's just click on New, give it a name, an organization name as an example, and then click on Next. And then you're good to go. So I don't know how long this video run. I think 2 minutes, but that's basically the time that it can take if you align with the prerequisites to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. So this deployment finished, and as you can see your host pools, your application groups over here right now, and you can see the status of your virtual machines directly from here. So you can see if there's like an outage, or you can see if the machine is in drain mode. Another great thing is that you can see how many users or which applications are published on that environment. So you go to applications, and inside that menu you see which applications are published for my end users. So you can easily click on add and add another application that is available as part of your session host. You can search in the start menu and then promote that application as an application that is virtualized, centralized, managed as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. And you can adjust existing remote apps as well. You can click on assignments, and as part of assignments, as I said earlier, you can assign it to a user count, but as well to Azure Active Directory groups. So you can just put in a group, and then afterwards you put users inside a group, and that leaves you up in a position to do it very dynamic and to maybe use a self-service service on top to do that kind of assignment for you in a very efficient way as well. So everything what you just saw is part of a public preview that is active right now as part of that blog article on the 30th of April. So end of this quarter, we will release this ARM-based model of Windows Virtual Desktop in GA. So if you are thinking about implementing Windows Virtual Desktop, I would suggest to start with this version, because once the moment you move into production, we probably most likely are GA. And after the GA release, we will move and make it available to choose different metadata locations to store as well as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop workspace. And the first one that is coming up, as I said earlier, is Europe.
We do have a whole lot of questions that I cannot type quickly enough to answer, so I promise we will get to them either during this session or after. But we could kind of go into it right now if you like, or shall we keep it till the end?
We can pick one or two.
Yeah, we could do like a speed date thing, because it's all over the place. A lot of it is about architecture. So, for example, would you recommend putting it in like a hub-spoke model? Would you put your host pools in the spoke, in the hub?
So the configuration of your session host is really depending on the size of your environment. So as part of your Azure subscription, if you have an environment of, for example, 20,000 user sessions, which effectively means 2,000 virtual machines, then it could be beneficial to split up some of the session hosts in a separate subscription in a hub-spoke kind of manner. But if you're a smaller customer, below 1,000 virtual machines, then one subscription will do fine.
That should be enough.
Yeah.
A lot of questions around single sign-on with Office 365.
So single sign-on is something that we can provide from the Windows client with an option to store the credentials encrypted on your endpoint. But single sign-on as part of the web portal is not supported yet, but that's addressed in the roadmap, so that comes soon available.
Yeah, and finally then, bunch of questions about auto scaling. So can we scale up or sideways, or how does that work?
So currently we support based on business hours, so time-based scaling. So based on the business hours, you can spin it down or spin it up. And what we are doing right now is making scripts available to do it based on events. So if you, for example, have your CPU spiking to 99% for like 10 minutes, you can spin up an additional machine, and the same for RAM.
And then the user load will be distributed if they connect again.
Exactly. So proactively, we will make it possible to size and to make it possible to proactively size that the end user doesn't see any difference in terms of the experience. So that's planned for Q3 this calendar year as well.
Right.
So that leads me up to the next slide, and that's like, I just explained the ARM-based capabilities, which is mainly focused on the admin experience and all the enrollment steps that I just explained. But we did some other great enhancements as well in terms of improving other components as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. So one of the great examples is what you just explained, is that we make event-based scaling possible. You can find more on that as well on the roadmap. We have a public roadmap that can share, or that shares public information on when it will be available. It's in this slide deck as well. But just to touch base on a couple of things that we recently released to make Windows Virtual Desktop a better service is, first of all, is that we made Azure files available as part of an storage mechanism to store your Azure profile containers in, and as well your future applications with a service that is called MSIX App Attach. I will share more on how that service works later on as well. So Azure Files is our platform as a service solution, which you can use to store your files as an SMB storage location on, and you are not responsible for the backend for that. So you only create a share, and that's everything what you need to do. And you can use it for Azure profile container as well. So that's a huge improvement and a further alignment of making it easier to maintain your virtual desktop environment. Same for Linux thin clients. So we support as well Linux as an endpoint. So you can use a Linux 0 client, a very low entry device, and use that to connect to your Windows Virtual Desktop environment, with Agile as a great partner that can provide the software for that. And as I said earlier, the M365 capabilities to enhance the security and integration with RBAC, MFA, conditional access is something we did as well. But the other great two things that I don't cover on this slide, but will show up right now, are Teams AV Redirection and the preview of MSIX App Attach. And that's something I will explain in the next roughly 5 minutes. So Teams audio and video redirection is something that was part of feedback that we received from the field. And okay, can we use Teams as part of Windows Virtual Desktop and get the same experience as on a local device? So with the Teams audio and video redirection client, we make it possible to not connect over the Teams cloud or Office 365 cloud, but go directly peer-to-peer to the other user, whether they are logged on to a virtual session or when you are logging on to a physical like laptop. The communication will always go from the endpoint side, and therefore it's very efficient. And the other great thing is that the audio and video traffic is being rendered to the endpoint as well. So you will see inside your virtual session as part of Windows Virtual Desktop, the same kind of behavior, the same devices redirected inside your session. So that creates a better support for devices and as well a better experience in terms of audio and video. So this demo explains how that looks and feels and how that works. So you need to install as part of your session host a plugin, a WebRTC plugin. And after you are done with that, you will see that Windows Virtual Desktop WVD will be in optimized state in the Teams properties. So you can request the Teams properties and you will see WVD optimized. And that means that the redirection, the redirection, AV redirection is active. So when you check that and did everything correctly, you can go to the device settings and you will see that your devices are available as they are locally available on your physical laptop. however now in the virtual session. And you saw already that the experience of the video is pretty smooth and pretty sharp as well. So the quality is just the same as on your physical laptop. And here you see me doing some checks at home, and you can see that everything works fine because I did my thumbs up, right?
So then everything is fine.
Then
right?
everything is fine.
One question came in. Does it also work the other way? So if you have like a jump box to connect to your machines at home or at the office, will we be supporting the Teams redirection as well?
So the Teams redirection is only supported on Windows Virtual Desktop. So if the question is that if you log on from your laptop or something like that, and you connect to your Windows Virtual Desktop session from a Windows 10 device, then that is supported. So the next steps are to make it supported as well for other kind of endpoints, like Mac as an example. So that's coming as well. Mm-hmm. Currently, Windows is the only supported way. So if you use a jump box, that depends really on the scenario. But basically, if you connect from a Windows device, a Windows 10 device to Windows Virtual Desktop, then it works and is supported. So let's continue to the next topic, and that's around application delivery. So something we released end of last year in public preview is MSIX App Attach. MSIX App Attach is our new way of doing application delivery very efficient. So in a traditional environment, you most likely create different images as part of your virtualized environment, and you create based on departments different images, and that is your subset of applications. So with Windows Virtual Desktop, it works a little bit different. So here you see a Windows Virtual Desktop environment, you see a user connects to the Windows Virtual Desktop environment. Eventually he gets one of the session hosts assigned as part of the host pool, and as part of the profile container technology from FS Logix, the profile will be assigned to that session separate from the session host. So already an efficient way of separating the profile from the operating system. So with the MSIX App Attach software, the service, we make it possible to separate as well applications from the image. So we make it possible to install and maintain and update an application separately from the image. So you can do an application update without updating the image on the fly during logon. If a user relogs on, he gets a new application version assigned. So a very efficient way of doing application delivery as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So if we zoom a little bit into how a traditional application delivery model looks like and how MSIX App Attach works, is on the left side you see a traditional application delivery model. You have different application silos, different versions of images, and as part of that image you install different application versions and different types of applications, and that's dedicated to that image. And that creates creates the need that when you do an update, you need to create a new image version, log every user off, back on, and then the new version is promoted. With MSIX App Attach, we make it possible to create one image and do the assignment of the applications during logon or boot of the machine, separate from the image. So you can do it very efficient because of that, because you can do the update of the application while the machines are running, and the user only has to log off or back on, or it can be done during a logged on session. And then the new version of the application is provided, and all the other users can just continue work. So it's a very easy way of doing image management and application delivery as part of Windows Virtual Desktop.
And is App Attach also going to be available for your regular machines?
Yeah, so MSIX is the application virtualization technology that we use for this. So that's just a Microsoft native technology. And with App Attach, we make it possible to mount a virtual hard drive to the session over a junction point symbolic link, and that application can be stored on Azure Files as an example. And MSIX itself is a service that is available on every Windows device, so that could be on a physical Windows laptop as well. And App Attach is something that is not specifically only available for Windows Virtual Desktop, so potentially you can use it as well on your RDS or traditional VDI environment, and do preparation to make later, for example, the move to Windows Virtual Desktop.
And I can only imagine that we're also working with different ISVs to make this technology available at a later time.
Exactly. What we think is that ISV will provide you the MSIX App Attach application, and you only have to mount it inside your organization. So all the updates, everything will be done by the ISV, and they will provide you that container. So yeah, another great efficient way of doing a different component, different from how we did it in the past. So how MSIX app attach works is basically, if you do it yourself, if you make the MSIX app attach container yourself, you need to expand the MSIX into a virtual hard drive. Afterwards, you need to do the staging and registration of MSIX and as well the virtual hard drive to your session host. And the registration will mean is that it injects the application as it is a local installed application inside your virtual session. So that's all happening with like an agent that we later will provide to you. And currently that's possible as part of the public preview with some PowerShell scripts. You can delay registration as well if you, for example, have multiple versions of an application, or you have a plugin that needs to be loaded later. That's possible as well to do sort of like a prioritization. And yeah, then your applications will be available on demand. So in the next demo, I will just show you how that looks and feels from the end user side. So there's a virtual hard drive now assigned to this session. You don't see that, that's happening on the back. And as part of this demo, I will show you how Visual Studio Code is not available on this machine. So you search for Visual Studio Code, it's not available. And after I run the MSIX app attach commands, it injects the application in milliseconds, and then it is available as a local installed application on this Windows Virtual Desktop virtual session. So if I do this search again for Visual Studio Code after I run that command, you will see Visual Studio Code available in this virtual session. So you can just click on it and it starts and looks and feels and runs as a local installed application inside the image, but it isn't. It is separated from the image and stored on Azure files as an example. So another great way of doing application delivery in a different way, and do it in a way that your end users are not being affected by logging off to the of the virtual session and do it on the fly during business hours as an example. So great way, and this is already available in public preview, and this will go shortly in GA as well. So we now talked about Windows Virtual Desktop. We touched base on what are the recent updates. So I would like to start a little bit to talk about migration before we end up.
We have about a good 10 minutes or so.
Okay, so let's take that 10 minutes to talk a little bit about the migration options that you have with Windows Virtual Desktop. So to accelerate migration based on like a brownfield scenario that you could have, like reuse your existing images, we have different options. But what drives mainly the migration to Azure? So in the beginning, I already shared some use cases why Windows Virtual Desktop is a good use case. But what we see in the field why the migration to Azure is like a good use case and a compelling use case is mainly because of like data center contracts expire, urgency of extra capacity, efficiency, as well as don't want to invest in hardware, but as well like improve the security of your environment, compliance, and align with a better support model because of the support model of Azure that's built in and very easy to use. So all kinds of good reasons to drive the migration to Azure, but the tool sets that we have in store to drive that migration, to make that migration possible, is something we provide as a baseline as well for free, and that's called Azure Migrate. And with Azure Migrate, we make it possible to make like lift and shift possible from like either Windows Hyper-V, Linux, as well as VMware Hyper-V, as I said earlier, but as well other clouds. So if you run on another cloud service, we make it possible to easy lift and shift from that cloud to Azure because you want to, for example, leverage an Azure service like Windows Virtual Desktop. And the great thing about Azure Migrate is that supports the digital transformation of like traditional SQL environments, data, web apps, but as well right now, virtual desktop infrastructures. So if you go to the Azure portal and you go to Azure Migrate, you will see an option right now available that's called VDI. And with that option, you can do an assessment on your existing traditional virtual desktop infrastructure, or RDS. And you can get all the information out of that and then do the lift and shift migration very efficient with like similar experience that you had on that existing environment on-prem. So to use Azure Migrate, you need to do some steps, obviously. So one is prerequisites of of Windows Virtual Desktop, of the use of Windows Virtual Desktop, as I explained earlier. So have that all in place. You need to set up Azure Migrate, eventually discover your virtual machines, review your assessment, and then eventually when you're done with the review and test the migration, you can do the lift and shift into the production environment. So those 7 steps are the initial steps that you need to take to migrate from an on-premises VDI infrastructure to Windows Virtual Desktop. So if we make the shift to Azure Migrate, as you can see over here, you can just click on Azure Migrate and go to VDI. And as part of that option, you can start a new project and you can just select one of our partners that we have to do assessments, like Lakeside with their SysTrack technology. And with that Lakeside SysTrack technology, you can capture all the components out of your existing VDI infrastructure and do the assessment because of that. You can do the calculation as well, what your eventual cost will be when you run like Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure. And you can do it very proactively because you get an optimization like report that can suggest, okay, this is the kind of SKU that you need as part of
It's
Azure.
really about right sizing.
Exactly. So proactively do the transformation and make sure that your sizing aligns with what you currently use. So that's what Lakeside SysTrack can provide as an ISV integration within Azure Migrate. So the next option that you need to select is like the server migration piece, and with the server migration you can do the actual lift and shift to Azure. So if you do the assessment with Lakeside, you just click on assessments, you log on, and as part of that logon, you need to download an agent that you need to install as part of your existing VDI infrastructure. So you just download that agent, install it on your endpoints, on your not on your endpoints, on your virtual desktops, and then it catches all those metrics that it needs to provide that report that gives you that similar user experience while using Windows Virtual Desktop on Azure. So eventually, when you're done with that, then all the metrics, all the information will be gathered and will be available in the SysTrack visualizer from Lakeside. And in that visualizer, you will see all the components, all the applications, which kinds of workloads you're using, all kinds of important information that you can use eventually when you switch back to Azure Migrate to see, okay, this is the kind of Azure service, Azure SKU, Azure size of the virtual machine that I need. This is my workload type. Is it like light, medium, or heavy? What do I need? So all kinds of insights that can make it better for you to do the shift proactively and to align with the user experience that users are getting today in the existing virtual desktop infrastructure. Or maybe even better, optimize the existing user experience and improve the user experience in the Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So eventually, when you're done with the assessment, you can start the migration. So you switch to server migration in Azure Migrate, and in server migration, you select, okay, what is my hypervisor environment? Do I use VMware or do I use Hyper-V? So for this demo, I will use Hyper-V. So I click on Hyper-V and I download the configuration files for Hyper-V, and then it will show the Hyper-V environment inside Azure Migrate, and then you can do the replication of your existing virtual machines and then start the migration. And when you're done with the migration and test the migration, you can decide what is the best moment to switch over in production as part of Azure Migrate. So that are the steps that I just explained very roughly, and that are the steps that you need to take if you want to use Azure Migrate for the migration. And one final step that you then need to take is potentially the migration of your user profiles. So I already explained that we use Azure Profile Container for that, and we provide migration scripts that you can use to convert roaming profiles or UPD or any other profile solution to the Azure Profile Container. So you can use the PowerShell script for that, and that converts, for example, UPD to the Azure Profile Container. And eventually then it will create on, for example, Azure Files, that new profile container for your user. And when he logs on to the new Windows Virtual Desktop environment, he will see the same properties, dashboard, wallpaper, everything that he normally uses as well as part of the session from an on-premises environment. So another optimization of doing application or profile and application delivery as part of Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure Migrate as part of this procedure as I just explained. And when you're done with that, you can just start the the desktop or application, and underneath your profile will be injected to the virtual session, and everything will be available in the same way as in the existing or in the previous traditional VDI infrastructure. So are there any more questions before I wrap up?
Oh, we have many questions. So we will keep answering these questions after the session or during the time that you can watch the approach of our partners. I think most recent questions is mostly about app attach. How can we, for example, make sure that if you have like a SAP plugin that goes with Excel, that these things load together?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the great thing about MSIX is that you can install and create MSIX app attach or MSIX packages in different ways. So you can, for example, if you have a plugin, you can install that plugin in that same package. And that creates a higher compatibility level for that like plugin and the application.
So you make one package of that.
Yeah, one application container for that, yes.
And
so
will we also be supporting app attach for Office 365 Pro Plus?
So currently that's not supported because of the click-to-run installation, but we are investigating to make that available very soon. Yeah.
And can you give a bit of an indication on how much load this will give, like for your profiles, for app attach?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So the load in terms of the IOs and everything that happens in the interaction is happening on the file side. So if you store it on Azure Files, then you need to proactively size Azure Files. So for example, you use premium files for that.
For a lot of writes.
Exactly. So you remove a little bit of resources from your session host and you transfer that to like the storage environments. So it's a very like dynamic way of doing that because you can save resources because of that on the session host.
Yeah. Amazing.
So let's close this event with a call to action. You probably already saw some great links in the menu around the video screen. So that are basically the same links that you see on this screen. So as part of Azure Migrate, the demos that I showed, we have some links here, and as well links that you can use to learn about Windows Virtual Desktop, as well as App Attach, as well as Azure Migrate, as I said, but as well an Azure starting guide of Windows Virtual Desktop that you can see over here. So please have a look, use this as homework, learn yourself even more or your colleagues. And with that, I would like to thank you for being part of this first section of this day. Hang in here because we have some great things in store. And if you want to keep up and stay informed about Windows Virtual Desktop, you can look me up on LinkedIn, as you probably already did in the corner. I don't know if it's this one or that one. However, you can find me as well on Twitter at @Brinkhoff_C. So I'm happy to connect with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian.
You're welcome.
Right, and this concludes our webinar week from a Microsoft perspective. But like Christian said, please join the sessions from Wortel, from a Rapid Circle, and also use the opportunity to actually hop on a Teams call and ask your detailed technical questions if we didn't get around to answering them. Thank you very much and have a good weekend.
Welcome to Windows Virtual Desktop, accelerating your move to the cloud. A computer on every desk in every home running Microsoft software. This vision, this statement was shared to us by Bill Gates in 1975. Back then, a very bold statement, but today it's being close to reality. I want to transition to a more recent quote done by Scott Manchester, who is a long-term program lead for the RDS and Windows Virtual Desktop team. He said, "An elastic compute resource hosted in the cloud and available on any location using any device." Again, a very bold statement, but we believe in it. And we think that Windows Virtual Desktop is going to make a huge contribution into achieving this goal. My name is Freek Bersson. I work for Wortel. We are a system integrator, cloud integrator focusing on the Microsoft platform. And I primarily focus on application and desktop delivery using remoting technology. Have been a Microsoft MVP on this topic for many years and excited to be here to share some of our knowledge about Windows Virtual Desktop. So let's start off by discussing the modern workplace. Today, in 2020, many organizations are asking themselves the question, what does a modern workplace mean to us and how can we achieve that goal? That's one end of the spectrum. On the other hand, we have application vendors who are already actively transforming their application from a traditional application to a software as a service, modern app, or web application to be able to support the modern workplace. We believe that Windows Virtual Desktop meets both of these worlds right in the middle, allowing you to publish applications and desktops directly from the cloud. When we're talking about the modern workplace, it's often being referred to as a personally assigned device joined to Azure AD and managed by Microsoft Intune. From that device, the user accesses all of his SaaS applications, web-based applications, and apps from various stores that were already transformed by that application vendor. As ideal as that sounds, it doesn't apply to every organization, every use case, or every user. More importantly, it also raises a couple of additional questions. For example, what if we want to allow the user to select his or her favorite device to work from? What if we still have Windows applications that require an application backend, and those applications need to be close to the application backend to get a good performance? How do we deal with heavy design applications that require a graphical processing unit to be able to run? And how can we leverage existing thin clients? You might still have them or still want to reuse them. How can we incorporate them in such a setup? And scaling is important. How can we make sure that the modern workplace scales to our needs without having a large CapEx to begin with? We believe that Windows Virtual Desktop is the answer to all of these questions and really completes the modern workplace story. So how can we as Wortel help you to embrace and start using Windows Virtual Desktop? We have designed a 4-step approach to help you accelerate and jumpstart your Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Phase number 1 is all about inspiration and assessment. We believe that sharing our knowledge and actively engaging you in the project is going to be beneficial for reaching our mutual goal. So we start off with a technical deep dive session. In this session, we'll tell you everything there is to need to know about Windows Virtual Desktop. We'll talk about end user and administrator experience, do a couple of demos, and answer any questions you might have. Then we'll take a look at your existing environment. So you might already have a server-based computing or VDI or physical desktop environment that you want to include. And together we fill in what's called an assessment document. In this document, we document your design choices, the requirements and the prerequisites, and any information we need to get started with the Windows Virtual Desktop proof of concept. So phase 2 is all about implementation. During this phase, we do the actual implementation of a Windows Virtual Desktop proof of concept in your environment. Based on our experience, we have also automated most of the steps after doing at least a dozen of these implementations based on Windows Virtual Desktop. We also know by experience that organizations think differently about allowing partners in their environment to install such a proof of concept. We've seen organizations on one hand that say, we want an administrator from our side to be available with every PowerShell command that you do and every click in the UI to be able for them to learn on the job. We've seen other organizations that say we do not have the time and effort to be able to do that. Just implement it for us and do a session with us to be able to get the information about what was implemented. We also, of course, use our common practices and best practices in this phase. So at the end of phase 2, we have a fully functioning Windows Virtual Desktop environment ready in your subscription to be able to start testing. That brings us to step number 3, which is all about testing the experience. So during this phase, you're able to test drive both the admin as well as the end user experience. And this phase is really about you. So we generally take a step back and allow you to test drive the functionality at your own pace. By experience, we know that such a test phase takes approximately 2 weeks to be able to test drive all of your scenarios and use cases and users. And that's totally fine. So during that proof of concept test phase, we also transparently collect telemetry data. So this provides us information about the usage of the proof of concept, which we'll use later on. Once we finish step 4, we go into once we finish phase number 3, we go into step 4, which is all about evaluation. It's important because this allows you to provide us feedback about your experiences, both from the admin and the end user experience. What was good and what can be improved. During this session, we also share with you the telemetry data that we collected during the proof of concept. This provides us information like which application was launched, by who, and how often, and which resources were consumed. And more importantly, which resources were consumed both on a server level as well as a user and even on a per application level. This allows us to provide you with information in order to be able to make a calculation of what a full production-ready environment would cost in terms of Azure consumption. The last step in this phase is discussing next steps. So we will give you our advice on what we think a good next step would be, but you get to make the final call. So a next step can be anything from we want to expand the current proof of concept with additional use cases, additional applications, or we want to transition that proof of concept into a fully production pilot environment, for example, for 25 users, or you want to design a full production-ready Windows Virtual Desktop environment. Either of those is fine, and we're happy to assist you with those. We're super excited about what Windows Virtual Desktop has to offer, but why would you engage with Wortel as your technology partner? We have a team of enthusiastic subject matter experts on board who have a long track record of being in this space. We've also seen all of the evolutions of Windows Virtual Desktop. So we've seen it evolve from terminal services to remote desktop services to Azure Remote App to RDMI to RD 2.0 and to finally Windows Virtual Desktop. During each of those evolutions, we've also been part of every technical preview, providing feedback to the product teams and being in close contact with those product teams as well. And finally, we are a as-a-service organization, which means that we generally do not just deliver a project or a delivery, but we want to be engaged along the way as well, and even after the project. So we want to engage in terms of user adoption and continuous improvement as well. So lastly, we think that Windows Virtual Desktop is much more than only the WVD deployment in the Azure portal. Since the spring release of Windows Virtual Desktop, it has become significantly easier to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. In fact, we think that any Azure administrator with some Azure experience should be able to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. The thing is, however, it doesn't end there. So as soon as you have deployed Windows Virtual Desktop, what you'll end up is a set of servers that are basically a server-based computing environment. So all of the knowledge that was gathered about Windows server-based computing environments still applies there. So think about how to optimize the logon speed, how to make sure that we deal with an application backend in the right way. What about sprinting and scaling and profiles? We have that knowledge on board and are happy to help that and share that with you as well. What about application backends? We think that we should include those as well, because yes, Windows Virtual Desktop is able to deploy a Windows client, an application client to the end user, but all of those clients generally also have an application backend. So you might not even have an Azure subscription yet. So we have something that's called Azure Out of the Box, which is a concept that helps you jumpstart your Azure subscription for application backend servers as well. Also physical devices. So you might want to include the physical devices to be able to have a good way of distributing them or installing them or optimizing them to be able to work in such a modern workplace. We have something that's called Work by Wortel, which is able to include the physical devices in such a project as well. And finally, security. So yes, Windows Virtual Desktop is Azure AD, is MFA, and is conditional access out of the box. But it's important to make a good balance between security and usability as well. We have the experts on board to help you with security-related questions and answer those during our proof of concept. So that brings us back to the quote that we started with, an elastic compute resource hosted in the cloud and available on any device anywhere in the world. So hopefully you thought our four-step approach was interesting. So again, let's go over the 4 steps once more. We have phase 1, which is all about inspiration and assessment. Then we take into phase number 2, the actual implementation of a proof of concept. Phase number 3, which allows you to test drive the functionality. And phase number 4, in evaluation and designing next steps. If you're interested in working with us, we have a call to action for you. So go and visit wortel.nl/Microsoft-webinar-WVD or scan the QR code on this page. We're happy to work with you in a future project. If you have additional questions, feel also free to reach out to me or my direct colleague Marcel Eken. We both run the Windows Virtual Desktop proposition from within Wortel. With that, I thank you for your attention, and we're looking forward to working with you in the future.
Hello, my name is Freek Terpstra. I'm working for Rapid Circle, and today I'm going to present you Rapid Circle and our approach for Windows Virtual Desktop within our cloud workplace. Rapid Circle is founded 11 years ago, and we're based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, in Pune in India, and in Melbourne in Australia, and we help over more than 200 customers worldwide. We help organizations with onboarding to the Microsoft Cloud. That means that we configure the Microsoft Cloud and also migrate all the data to the Microsoft Cloud. That can be documents, that can be emails, but that can also be applications or complete workplaces that we migrate to Azure. Next to that, we optimize the Microsoft Cloud and also manage the Microsoft Cloud so that the organization can get the most out of that cloud. And also, we look at business processes and help the business get the most out of the Microsoft Cloud so that everyone can work easily and the most efficient. And next to that, to make sure that people really work that way, we're helping organizations with change management so that everyone knows how they have to work with the tools that Microsoft offers. The last couple of months, we've seen a lot of change within how people are working. Everyone is working from home, of course, and that has a huge impact on how we are organized, but also how people are working, but also on the IT department and what they have to offer to employees to work together. A lot of organizations now have a workplace on-premise, like SCCM or a VDI environment. And that gives a lot of challenges for organizations, for the organization as a whole, but also for the employee itself. For instance, it's difficult to have multiple device management layout for the organization. So it's difficult to enable new devices, but also for the end user, some of the solutions, it's difficult to have audio or video enabled. So especially for working from home and working with Microsoft Teams, it's difficult to work with the whole experience. A lot of organizations nowadays have an on-premise workplace like SCCM or a VDI solution on-premise, and that has a lot of opportunities and a lot of positive aspects, but also it's difficult for some organizations to give the people within the organization what they need. For instance, a lot of people want to use Microsoft Teams with audio and video, and not everywhere that's possible. But also, if you want to use different kinds of devices, not in every case it's possible to choose your own device and work with every device that you want. So to help that, there are three concepts that with Windows Virtual Desktop, where that can help to get a better workplace. So we have three alternatives, and the first alternative is the complete cloud workplace. That's a workplace managed from out of the cloud, usable for every device that you want, an iPhone, an iPad, an Android device, a Windows device, or a Mac device, or any other. And all the data is stored in the cloud, and also all the applications are in the cloud via SaaS. So all the employees within the organization can use everything from the cloud and everything on all the devices. That's the end state where a lot of organizations are looking to. But of course, not all the organizations are that far that is possible to implement that. So for organizations that has a lot of legacy applications, you have to go to a hybrid scenario. Then you get a cloud workplace with an add-on of app virtualization. So there's everything as what I just said, but only specific legacy applications will be virtualized via Windows Virtual Desktop, and only for a few employees that really need that application. So then you have a complete modern cloud workplace, but also with legacy applications from out of Azure. For organizations that are really complex or really have a lot of legacy applications, or that has really a demand for desktop virtualization, then you have the complete cloud desktop virtualization workplace. And that's a workplace from out of Azure Cloud, and that can be a VDI solution like Citrix, but it can also be a complete Windows Virtual Desktop solution, where you virtualize the complete Windows Virtual Desktop, Windows 10 desktop to everyone. And then you have one secure bubble where everything is stored and where everyone can make use of. The positive sides of these three workplaces is that it's future-proof. So it's very easy and flexible. So it's easy to scale up, it's easy to scale down, and it's easy to add extra elements to that. And next to that, there's a complete integration between Office 365 and that workplace. So everyone can work seamlessly on the device that he wants, and also with audio and video, and you can do everything that you want. So I want to show you one case. Recently we got live the cloud workplace for Zorggroep Noordwest-Veluwe, a healthcare organization. And this organization we helped to get live with a complete cloud workplace. Within a couple of months, we migrated them from a complete on-premise environment to a complete cloud environment with all the applications are being provided via SaaS. And the organization can choose the devices that they want. So they can use mobile phones, they can use the laptops that they want, or fat clients that they want, and everything is flexible and scalable. And we offer that with for one price for licenses, for devices, and also for management. So what's next? Well, at the end of this webinar, I'm available for a small Q&A. And next to that, we also have a lot of webinars that we're going to give the next couple of months, and that are in two streams. One stream is working from home, and that's our webinars about teams, about culture, about how you work in documents, about security, everything that you need to do and to know to make sure that people can work from home. And the other stream is mostly focused on Azure, more technical. And so every week we're going to present one webinar, deep dive on Azure, about fundamentals of Azure, Windows Virtual Desktop, or other elements from Azure. So please subscribe if you think it's interesting to one of these three, and that you can do via the link below, www.rapidcircle.com/WVD. And I will see you hopefully next Tuesday. Thank you.